Hi and welcome back. In this video we're going to be developing our Milestone project. In fact, it's going to take this video and a few more videos since this is a bit of a larger application. What I've added here to our app.py is a set of bullet points, and I've put them inside these triple quotation marks here. And I know that we've seen this a little bit before, but just as a reminder, this is a multi-line string. A string that takes up multiple lines, and it lasts from the 3 quotation marks until the 3 quotation marks at the end. Basically, Python isn't going to run this because it's just a string. It doesn't do anything. So it's a good way to type out some stuff that you want to know for your program or some things that you want to remember. So I've done that here just for a benefit. I've got our user interface. You know this from the brief. Enter A to add a movie, L to see your movies, F to find a movie, and Q to quit. This is the main part of the user interface. This is what the user is going to see the first time they run the program, and is what they're going to be able to interact with by typing A, L, F, and Q. Granted, this is not a graphical interface. That's what you normally see when you talk about interfaces. But it is a text interface, and that's totally valid. So the user is going to be able to do 4 things. Add a new movie, see the existing movies, find a particular movie, and stop running the program when they type Q. So let's come up with some tasks that we'll have to do in order to make our program functional. The first task is show the user the main interface and get their input. The second task is going to be to allow users to add movies. Then we're going to allow users to show all their movies, find a movie. Finally, we will allow users to also stop running the program when they type Q. As we start developing the program, we will be adding more tasks to this list of tasks, so that, because this is going to be a sort of live set of tasks as we go along. For example, as we start developing, we may realize, hey, what is a movie? Where are we going to store our movies? In a larger app, we may store them on a database, for example. But here, we're going to have to decide where to store movies. What is the format of a movie? So these are a couple of tasks that we will have to think of. Okay. Let's start with defining the user interface. This is our menu. And the first thing we want to do is ask the user this first question: what they can type in order to interact with our program. So I'm going to save it into a user underscore input variable, the result of this input function here. And we're going to, copy all that and put it in there. Now this is a bit of a longer string. My font is quite big for you guys to be able to see it, but it just says that. And I'm going to add a colon at the end and a space just so it's a bit nicer. Okay, there we have it. Now, as you develop, you may notice these gray lines. And PyCharm just tells you that, hey, Python styling has some particularities that you may want to follow. And one of them is that it expects 2 blank lines before a function definition as opposed to just 1. So if you add a new blank line on top, it'll be happy. Similarly here, it says you've got a blank line at the end of the file, and well, you've got too many of them. So if you only have 1, then it'll be happy, but of course we're going to continue developing here. So as you see these squiggly gray lines, feel free to search in Google to see what they mean, and then you can maybe get rid of them. Although sometimes pep8 can be a bit, by the way, pep8 is the Python styling thing. It can be a bit cumbersome because it constrains you a bit. It can constrain you a bit. So just remember, you can ignore it if you want. Anyway, small side thing. We've asked the user for their input, and now what we want to do is deal with it. So if user input is A, we're going to do something. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a new movie. But we don't have the functionality to add a movie yet, but we know that we're going to add it later on. And now there are a couple of questions we have to ask ourselves. The first one is, does the add movie functionality depend on anything inside this function? And the answer is no, because once we've reached this point, user input's already fulfilled its purpose. So the add movie part here of our program is going to deal with asking the user for what they want to add, for example, the movie name, and is going to deal with actually adding the movie to whatever it is that we're going to store our movie. So we can just type add_movie, calling this function that doesn't exist yet, but we're going to add it later on. Notice how now you get a red squiggly line that says unresolved reference, because this thing here that we're using doesn't exist. This is fine. We now know that we need to add a function called addMovie that is going to deal with adding the movie. And that's a pretty nice thing to know, because our program is now broken down into two parts, the menu and the addMovie function. And we're going to do the same thing for the other functions, the other pieces of functionality. So if user input is equal to L, we're going to show movies. If user input is equal to F, we're going to find movie. And otherwise, we're going to just not do anything. If user input is equal to Q, we can print something like stopping program. Okay? Now, something you may notice when you do this is that we've got an if statement here, followed by another if statement, followed by another if statement, followed by another if statement. So we've got 4 independent ifs. Remember, an if statement is always independent from any other if statements, unless you do something like elif or else. And all these if statements are going to run one after another. So when the user types, say, A, the first thing we're going to do is check whether the user input is A, which it will be. So we will run this function once we've made it. Then we will check whether the user input is L, which it cannot be because it was A. So we will not run this. Then we will check whether the user input was F, which it cannot be because it was A. And then we will not run this. Then we will check whether the user input was Q, which it cannot be because it was A. And then we won't print that. So as you can see, what I'm saying here is that all these if statements are related. If one of these runs, the others cannot possibly run because user input cannot both be A and L. What to do is turn them into elifs. Now, when the user types A, we're going to add a new movie. And then we want to repeat this entire thing and allow the user to type something else, like L, for example. Then we want to run the entire thing again and ask the user to type something else. And at that point, they may type Q, and then we'll stop the program. We won't ask them anything else. So what I'm saying here is that there needs to be a loop that will repeat this over and over and over until the user types Q. So how are we going to do that? Well, I think that the best thing to do would be to add a while loop that says that while the user input is not Q, we'll run this, and as soon as the user input is Q, we will stop running. Of course, these things have to be more indented so that we put all of this inside this program here, this loop here. But notice something that you probably won't notice until you actually run the app, and unless you've done this a few times, that the user input is asked at the start of the function, but not inside the loop. So we'll ask the user for their input, and then we will just continue running this endlessly without ever asking the user for input again, because this input line is outside the loop. So what we want to do is make sure that this line is also in the loop. And what we're going to do is just get it all, copy it, and put it at the end of the loop. The reason I'm putting it at the end and not at the start is that if I put it at the start, then we'll ask the user for input, and then as soon as we go into the loop, we'll ask the user for input again, which will be mildly weird for the user. Okay? And this makes us realize that if the user types Q to begin with, this loop is not going to run, because Q will be equal to Q. So nothing here will run. If the user types A, we will go in here and add a new movie. Then we will ask them again, and let's say they type Q. Then the loop will stop running because we'll go back to the top, we'll check this, and it will be false, so it will stop, and it will continue at the end. So we are never going to go into this if statement. That's what I'm saying. Because if the user input is Q at any point, this loop is not going to run. So we can just get rid of it. However, something that we may want to use is an else here that says print something like unknown command. Please try again. We can print that, and then the user knows that, hey, we're not messing around. You can only enter what we've told you you can enter. Okay? Now, this is our menu, and we can run our menu function if we choose to. And notice how, once again, we get this pep8, and it says expected 2 blank lines. So we have to put 2 blank lines in there. And then we still get a small squiggly line, and it says no new line at the end of the file. So it wants an empty line at the end of the file. And once you put it in, all the squiggly lines disappear. Now we only have 3 squiggly lines that are red. That tells us our functions haven't been defined yet. Let's run our app first of all to check how we're doing, and then we can continue in the next video with the other stuff. So make sure you call your menu function, and then go and right-click on app and press run. Then you'll get this here, and I know it's a bit small. I'm going to zoom in when I'm editing the video. And you've got enter A to add a movie, L to see your movies, F to find a movie, and Q to quit. So we can type something like A. What do you think is going to happen when we do that? I'm sure you got it. We're probably going to get some sort of error, right? Because we've not defined add movie. And that's correct. We get a name error that says name add movie is not defined. So you've used this thing here, but it doesn't exist. So, okay, that's fine. That's as expected. Notice how our program completely stopped. We exited the while loop. Everything went haywire. Our program crashed, essentially. Not great. We'll have to define that function later on. Let's run it again. And then type Q. Then the program just finishes. Okay? If you want, feel free to, after the while loop, add an if statement, or before the while loop, that says if you've typed Q, exit the program or something. Feel free to play around with this code. I mean, this is going to be your application, so feel free to add any functionality you want. And of course, if you've not yet attempted to develop this program on your own, and you feel like now you are more capable of doing so, please, before moving on to the next video, go ahead and try typing all of this out and continue developing these 3 functions. Again, by doing this yourself is the best way to learn. So if you can develop it yourself, do so, and then you can move on to the next video and check how we've done it here. So that's it for this video. I'll see you on the next one.